Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and look, it's Connor Nielsen. And we're
Hello,
here
everybody.
to tell you how we felt about a couple of movies that came out recently. Tonight, we're going to chat with you a little bit about Dunkirk and also Bill and Ted Face the Music. And it's weird discussing these movies together, Connor, because of the oddities that they have in common. They're both kind of time travel movies, and they're both about whether or not you can, alter anything in the past, and they're about time paradoxes. And really didn't think when I went into Tenet that those two movies would be as weirdly connected as they are, and they couldn't be further opposites in every other way, but in the time travel mechanics and stuff, not that Bill and Ted's time travel mechanics make any sense, and I guess a person could argue that Tenets don't either, but it's more interesting, when you're trying to break that down. So anyway, really odd talking about these together. Connor, by the way, we're recording this live because why not? We're using this software anyway, so we might as well record and go live, let everybody see this if they're up late. We started real late tonight. We're not going to usually start at 10 o'clock or later than that, even 10 o'clock Central Time on a Sunday night. But I had some family in town this weekend and didn't have time to do this earlier in the evening. So you got us crazy late. So if you're here right now, thanks a bunch for watching. Super cool of you. We're going to do how we felt about on these, not full-blown spoiler casts, but what we're going to do is open up a real quick spoiler. Okay, so wait, are those hot peppers, or are those just regular peppers?
These are just regular bell peppers.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I thought you were gonna do the whole hot pepper challenge thing. I thought you were gonna be like, oh man, I'm feeling this movie, and then you got like a hot pepper, and then now with the hot pepper in your mouth, you've got to give the synopsis for the next film.
Yeah, there was a commenter on our spoiler cast for New Mutants says that Connor should get bell peppers for his feeling it peppers, and I thought, you know what, that's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Do that.
And we have this ridiculous gimmick now where Connor has to have completely different green and red objects every time. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep that going.
I don't know how long I can keep it going, but I'll try. Maybe I'll just make a paddle next time, and that'll be so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely, so. Sure. You could do it with a T-shirt too. You got red on the front of your Hard Rock shirt, and you could like turn around and have a green one in the back. Yeah.
I like it. Or
even like the back of that chair is red, and then the other part, the back of the front of the chair could be green. You could be like, I'm feeling it, Or if you're not, you could be like, I'm not feeling it,
Well, yeah, I got like two chairs. Which one am I going to sit in?
Yeah. The opportunities, Connor, are boundless.
They're infinite.
Or you're wearing red earbuds right now. You could have a pair of green earbuds on the side, and then put those in.
Well, I mean, my favorite color is red, and my little brother's favorite color is green. So I think I can like go through his bedroom and like find something.
Well, I try to really quickly like make fun of you while you're taking off your headphones and getting other ones on, and hope that you don't hear the joke. And then anyway, all right. So Connor, I'm gonna let you decide which movie we start with.
Oh, good heavens! I saw
7-Eleven?
Tenet first, so let's go with Tenet.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
Will Bill and Ted will be the nice, easy lap around once we finish the marathon of trying to wrap our heads around Tenet. So
yeah. Well, spoiler alert. I'm not prepared to do that yet. My thoughts on Tenet, I think, are going to be for me very, very quick. But
okay. So this is the so we're going to do non-spoilers. So I'm just going to read the IMDb plot synopsis of Tenet, and it's pretty vague. And so,
okay, I was gonna be like, do we have time for this? Like, it's such a complicated story.
All right, so armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world, and we know it's a twilight world because Robert Pattinson's in the movie. Was
that on purpose? Was that on purpose? That's a question I have.
Maybe it was, but the protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. So this is the latest offering from Christopher Nolan. He has switched up some of his crew with this one. Hans Zimmer is not doing the musical score this time around. It's instead given to us by Black Panther and the Mandalorian's Ludwig Göransson.
Oh, cool. I
And
didn't pick up on that because I wasn't looking at the list of people who worked on this movie.
and and then this is the first film in forever that's not been edited by Lee Smith. It's been edited by the woman who I believe did Hereditary or Midsummer, maybe both. But she's a really good editor, and he's shaking it up. Obviously, Michael Caine has a small role in here, but this primarily stars John David Washington as
Who
the
I've
protagonist.
never seen in anything.
He was in one other movie. He was the lead in Spike Lee's film Black Klansman.
Yeah,
and
you mentioned liking that movie, and I've not seen it yet. I know he produced Book of Eli for Denzel Washington, but
well, he is Denzel Washington's son.
right.
And we also have Robert Pattinson. The guy from Yesterday was in this movie, which was that Beatles rom-com.
Which I keep meaning to see, and I keep forgetting about it.
It was okay.
That's what I already said, which is why I haven't seen it yet.
I believe his name is Hamish Patel. And then there's Michael Caine has a small part in here, and you got some of your typical Christopher Nolan, but really the star here is Christopher Nolan, as most of his films of late have been. The best way to describe this movie from just a feeling and somewhat plot level is Inception meets Memento, and
would you believe?
I feel like,
would you believe that's exactly what I was going to say?
Oh, really?
Yes,
okay.
That is precisely what I was going to say. It's Inception and Memento, because of his obsession with nonlinear and working your way backwards, and just the mind freakness of Inception. Yeah, honestly, I was going to say that, and I thought you were going to argue with me. I thought you were going to not agree with that.
Oh, really?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And so
Oh yes, Daniel Davis. Don't forget about Kenneth Branagh.
Oh, Kenneth Branagh and Elizabeth Debicki from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is in this movie.
Wait, who's she in Guardians 2?
She is the leader of the Sovereign. She's the Golden Lady.
Oh yes, of course she is. Yeah. She's.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away yet. She's awesome in this movie.
She's great. I like her in everything that when she shows up. She was in a movie by Steve McQueen, not that Steve McQueen, director named Steve McQueen, called Widows a couple years ago, and she was great. I think it's awesome that directors are letting her be 6'3" now, because she just towers over everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, she's cast in a role where that makes a lot of sense. You need that towering presence for what she's doing in this. Carl Maxey says, Misception? That's great.
So I guess plot-wise, there's a man played by John David Washington, and he is on a mission. It's basically Christopher Nolan's super spy, and I just like the process of watching it the first time is so overwhelming, and like you're trying to wrap your head around it and can't quite understand what's going on. I described it as like his super spy adaptation of Final Crisis. But I guess on a film level, I would honestly probably, after watching it 2 times, I would call it probably Christopher Nolan's Infinity War, where it is like all bombast and all spectacle, and they have not confirmed or anything. I think there might be a sequel to this movie if I'm reading the movie right, and I think that there's more to this movie than...
It feels like there should be. I agree with that, yeah. You have me at a disadvantage, sir, because I've only had a chance to see this movie one time. I went yesterday morning, and I walked out of the theater and thought the same thing you did, because we've spoken very briefly privately about this, and you were like, or on the Discord or something, and you were like, I need more time with this. I need to see it again. I need to spend some time thinking about it, and I've not had time to do any of that stuff. So yeah, so you're much more prepared than me.
Yeah, I'm curious. I guess, I mean, you want me to go first in terms of if I'm feeling it or not?
Yeah, and throw out best thing, worst thing.
Okay, so
if you can do that in a non-spoiler way. Also, real quick before you do that, let me tell the live audience that when we get done with the feeling it signs, we will very briefly, if I didn't mention this earlier, take a few questions for spoiler territory if anybody wants us to get into anything. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, and partly because we're late, and also partly because this is so ultra first impression-y for me. And I have to take that on a case-by-case basis with each movie. Like, some things I'm pretty solid on a first viewing, and some things I'm like, this is, in my mind, the consummate you need to see this twice kind of movie, just like Memento was.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I like some of his films more than others.
Yeah.
He's very important to me just in my development as like a film fan and learning about like just cinema in general. Inception to me is what The Matrix is for you. I think I was a similar age. I think I'm 9 years younger than you are, and that movie came out 9 years after or 11 years after.
Oh, and they had that back in the theater last weekend, and man, I wish I had time to go. I would have liked to have done that again.
Yeah, it's I've been rewatching it actually the last couple of weeks. I wanted to because it's its 10th anniversary, and
that's why it was in the theater
again. It was kind of crazy to watch that after so many years of having not seen it. And so as of late, though, Nolan's been on a bit of like an interesting trajectory where his last film was Dunkirk and the one before that was Interstellar. And ever since Dark Knight Rises, which I think Dark Knight Rises is the beginning just in terms of his filmmaking style, the beginning of something new. And then he gets a new cinematographer with Interstellar, which is Hoyt van Hoytema, who's been doing his cinematography in every movie since then. And so I was really excited just to see where this goes after Dunkirk, because that was kind of his weird artsy movie that is kind of like his awards movie. And it definitely was nominated for awards, and he was finally nominated for director and all the year-end ceremonies. And I didn't love Dunkirk, though. It's a movie I appreciate more than I like. And it was only an hour and a half long, and it has like almost like compared to all of his films, it has significantly the least amount of dialogue. It's like almost all sensory and like atmosphere and visuals. I am shocked
to hear that's that short, because I haven't gotten around to seeing it, and it looked like the kind of thing that would be a 2.5-hour epic. But then you think about that. I mean, I don't know much about that event, but you think about that event, and it's like, well, how do you do that? Make a really long movie about that. So.
And he finds a very unique way of doing it. This one, though, I was very fascinated by, because it seems like he heard people's criticisms of Inception that there's not that there was too much exposition, because there's a lot of it in this movie, but he heard people say that it was too hand-holdy, and he went, okay, you're not going to get your Ellen Page character in this movie. And so it's a lot. And so I will say that as of right now, I'm feeling it. I can get into my best thing, worst thing after I finish chewing. But what about you?
Well, so we have not very often, if ever, I think we've done this before, done more than one movie on how we felt about, but I've never been, if we've done that before, more curious to see if you go for a red sign flip on the next one just for the sake of symmetry. Just so that other pepper gets a bite out of it. I really need that to happen. I don't know if we're gonna find out that Connor dislikes the Bill and Ted threequel enough to take a bite out of it. But I really need to see. So I'm not telling you what to do with your sign, but I'm kind of, there's a part of me that just wants that other pepper to not feel left out. But anyway, well, that was wonderful.
I feel the same way.
Thank you for that. Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's not fair to that movie if you liked it, you know. Anyway, that was great, Connor. Thanks for your thoughts and all that information. Because you know Nolan's history better than I do, and I always learn a lot when you talk about that. Because I don't know his cinematographers, and I don't keep it to track real hard the background and stuff. So. I've not seen Nolan's entire catalog. I saw Interstellar one time. I saw Inception one time. I need to go back to that at some point. Nolan makes primarily, in my mind, these kinds of films that you need to see twice, where they're layered enough, especially in their really intricate plotting, where like you're very often you get to the end and a bunch of stuff comes together and you weren't sure where a lot of things were going. Sometimes you don't know where hardly anything is going, and then you get to the end and it's like, okay, it all came together. It feels right. It feels like the puzzle pieces all came together and the whole thing gelled, but you don't always have an appreciation of all of those individual parts and pieces. And then you watch it again, and from the beginning you can see the end. from the beginning, and in all the ways that we were always leading there, kind of like a Fight Club. And Nolan, in my mind, makes a lot of kind of genre Fight Clubs, if that makes any sense. And so like I had that to some degree with Interstellar, although I think it falls apart a little bit. I don't like that movie as well as some of his others. I really liked Inception, but I needed more time with it, and then I got distracted, and I never spent any more time with it. I've not seen his last movie, which sounds like a departure from that whole thing. This watches to me like a classic, and Nolan's been working long enough, I think we could almost say this, but it feels almost like a classic film director getting back to his roots and then making like the most ambitious thing he ever made, where it feels like he had to go through the exact career he did before he could make the movie we saw here. And I know that this was a story that he had percolating in his head for a really long time, and he was having a really difficult time figuring out how exactly it would all make sense and work and gel, and with the time travel conceit and the idea of things moving backwards in time at the same time as things are moving forward in time, and how which is a thing I've never really exactly seen before, and how those things would actually interact with each other if they met, not simply because usually in a time travel movie, and this makes a big deal out of, and this was in the trailers, like, it's not time travel. Well, it is, actually. You are moving backward in time, but in a more literal sense than you usually get, where it is that kind of we've seen this in some Star Trek episodes and in some different sci-fi stuff, where you have somebody with a power or a contraption that would allow you to control time, where you could move, sort of like a hero from Heroes, where you could like move time forward, move time backwards, and then like you yourself in moving forward could interact with those things, and how would the physics of that work? What would the logic of it be? In this, it's literal time travel, where instead of you've decided to go back in time, so you press a button and instantaneously you disappear, and then you show up back then, you have to actually travel. You have to like physically go through everything to get there, and if I've seen that, I don't remember it, and it was never done exactly like this. I thought this was a really original idea, and a really original way to put it on screen, and like I said, it's super ambitious, and it's also really gutsy, because it's a really difficult thing to realize visually. There are places with fight scenes and stuff where I do not know what's going on, and Nolan knows that, and he is challenging himself to see if he can communicate it. And I think sometimes he manages it on a first viewing, and sometimes he fails at it. And if I watch it again, I may pick up on more things, and I probably will. But there's a lot of places where I'm going, okay, there's some crazy time stuff going on. There's a person who is moving backwards while they're fighting a person, which is mind-boggling to watch. And there are places where I don't think it translates super well to screen. But I think Nolan knows that. Like I said, that's not even really a criticism. I think he's challenging himself to see if he can make you understand it. There are places in this movie where I think it is better served as prose, where I almost think it would be better as a novel, even though it is a big spectacle, like you said, and it's such a fascinating thing to try to turn into a spectacle, because it isn't like, and there's a lot of grand set pieces, and it's one of the most fascinating car chases I've ever seen, because you see cars going backwards in time on a freeway while other things are going forward. It's crazy, but it's also like really nuanced action, where like you've got to really be paying attention and thinking, and you almost have to know something about physics to even get what's happening. It's wild as a visual spectacle. So anyway, best thing, worst thing. I'm gonna start with worst thing, and I'm gonna be a broken record, and I'm gonna say what everybody else is saying. I'm missing about 35 to 40% of the dialogue, and this is a movie where that can't happen. I just am not picking up on enough of what people are saying. Some of it is accents, and some of it I really do think is sound mix. And a lot of people have been talking about that. I experienced the very same thing. I feel like the protagonist, because our main character curiously doesn't have a name. We have a kind of like James Bondian secret agent as our main character, and like I said, this Washington, I've never seen him before. The son of Denzel, he's spectacular in this. I loved him.
I love him. I love his voice. He has a great voice.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is, 90% of the time, I could understand what he was saying. It was almost like he was wearing a lapel mic and nobody else was. Like he's mic'd separately, but everybody else has boom mics. But he gets one right up here so that I can hear what he's saying. There is way too much exposition in this movie for me to not hear enough of it. And I went back and looked at a plot synopsis, and I went and I didn't get this part, and I didn't get this part, and like a lot of those things are things that you can't get from just the visuals, because while this is a very visual spectacle, it's also very Ian Fleming, and that's why I say it could have been a book, because so much of it is told in the talking, which again is not a problem. It is that kind of movie.
You get a character say, "Don't try to understand it, just feel it." The problem is, in order to feel this, I have to understand it.
Yeah, and you cannot have. Yeah, that's a great point. And now, to be fair, I don't want to go too far with what that character is saying, because I don't think that's the movie telling you to sit back, relax, and don't think about it. I think that's that character saying, "Don't think too hard about the time travel," to that character and then the movie invites you to think really hard about the time travel. And I actually really appreciated that. I don't think that's actually saying anything to the audience. I think that's about the protagonist in that scene, which I had a great deal of respect for. But that's my read on that. But I just feel like you can't, if I'm wrong, and that is what he's hoping, that this movie would almost work with the sound off. It can't have like 65 separate plot points like it does. I mean, it's just, it's really, really complicated. There's no simple explanation of this movie, and I really appreciate the synopsis you read, because it's not a synopsis, it's a log line, and we'd be here all day if we did anything more than that. So that is the worst thing. This is the last movie on the planet where the where the soundtrack should be overpowering the dialogue, and it does. I don't know what's happening sometimes, and that ends up being, and honestly, I'm missing major stuff.
Was the way the audio was originally going to be mixed on Dark Knight Rises. I don't know if you saw the 7-minute prologue in IMAX before Mission Impossible 4.
I did, and it had that same problem, and nobody could understand Bane, and it wasn't just that he had that weird voice, it was the mix.
Yeah, but then after Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar's got it, Dunkirk has it. You're able to get away with that a lot in Dunkirk, because there's not a whole lot of discussion, and in that movie, nobody's really a character. It's really an experiment in terms of how can you empathize with people on the core basis of survival. And you're just wanting people to survive. And so it's able to sort of get away with that. And I like it in Interstellar more than I like it here, because a lot of the time the sound mixing doesn't have a lot of noises going on when they're doing the expositing, because when they're doing the expositing, they're in space where there's no sound. And so they can kind of get away with it a little bit more. And when you do have people going, go, 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 yeah, 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 you can't really hear it over the organs and the, explosions and stuff. And they're yelling at each other to go do this and go do that. I almost feel like it's a part of, if it's an orchestra, it's part of the piece, and it all sort of goes together in a way that where the dialogue in this movie is I think I can understand it better than most. I did see it in IMAX, and I think that maybe helped.
I did too. Didn't help me, and I was sitting right next to a speaker. I couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I got it more. I mean, maybe it's because I was prepared. I don't know why. It didn't bother me as much, but there were pieces of information where I said, okay, when this comes out on 4K, I'm gonna buy it, watch it with subtitles,
I needed
pause
subtitles.
it every few minutes, write everything down so I completely understand what's happening, and then watch it again without subtitles, and I'll be fine. But
well, and I
for
feel
that
like a
first time
lot
in
of
the theater,
people would probably appreciate this more, and I know a lot of people are really liking this movie, but I'm sure it's frustrating for some people, and a lot of folks are saying it's too long, which is a criticism Nolan gets a lot with stuff, apparently, except for his last movie. And when you, I think a lot of folks that are kind of looking at their watch or just feel really confused wouldn't be that way if we could just read the words on the screen. And I'm not saying that he actually should have put subtitles in the movie theater, but if for some reason stylistically he feels like he's got to have this sound mix, how on earth can he listen to this and not go, some people are going to miss it? I don't understand why he does that. I need someone to explain it to me. And because it sounds like it's on purpose the way you're talking about it. I don't get it. And your job as a director is to communicate to your audience. So if you want to make a silent film, make a silent film. And he clearly doesn't want to do that. He wants to make a James Bond movie in this crazy pseudoscience genre, and it's working great. And by the way, we know that he's a huge Bond fan, and that Bond was a giant influence on the Batman movies, and this is the absolute most Bondian thing he's made. To the point where I would say that if you wanted to do the gender switched, or not gender, excuse me, the race switched James Bond, like a lot of people have talked about, Washington is the guy. I mean, after this movie, I wouldn't want that because it would feel like a repeat. But I felt like in places I was almost watching a modern James Bond in this. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and
although he's the least cynical Bond of all time, so maybe not. Because one of the things I found really endearing about him, of course, was how extremely positive he was.
Yeah.
Which was refreshing, by the way.
To your point, what I think makes this feel super Bondian, and I think it feels more Bondian than any of the Daniel Craig movies, to me anyways.
Well, that's fair, Daniel Davis. Yeah, Washington's also American, so he's got that against him. Now, we almost cast Adam West in the 60s as Bond, but I think these days nobody's going to accept a non-British James Bond. That's fair.
Sterling K. Brown, get on it, man.
He's also not British, is he?
Is he? I thought he was British.
Brown? If he is, I've never heard him in interviews, but I thought I had. That means he's faking an American accent all the time, because I've never heard him do a British accent. Okay. I don't think he is, but maybe you're right.
I mean, I don't know for certain, but I think I thought he did a voice in the second Frozen movie, and I'm like, oh, cool. Idris Elba showed up, and then it said Sterling K. Brown. I'm like, whoa, time out.
Maybe he was faking the accent there.
You're right. I don't know,
anyway.
But to your point, in terms of the Bondian nature of this, this felt very classical.
Daniel Davis, nope, he's from Missouri. I knew it!
Oh, whoa, he got me good. That guy can do like anything. I love Sterling K. Brown.
I know, he's one of my favorite actors right now.
So, but just in terms of like the Bondian nature, this felt like the most classic blockbuster in like a super classical sense that few do, and the reason is like, you watch as you're like, man, rich people, like it's a completely different lifestyle, because they're doing like, in probably one of the weirdestly mixed scenes, is like they're racing boats. I've never seen anybody do that before.
Me neither.
And it's sort of like lifestyle thing that's probably a thing that rich people do. I don't know, because I never see it. It's never put in movies, and people doing activities like that, and talking about the suits they wear, and like the kind of champagne they need to order, and all that kind of a thing. And like the protagonist is like out of his depth, and that's kind of addressed. But there's like all these details about like the world he has to like sort of the world he has to sort of penetrate to like get close to Kenneth Branagh's Russian guy. It's like, it's so exotic, and like it feels like I'm a classic film goer going to the movies to see a kind of lifestyle I don't see anymore, and that's what I think was really neat about this movie.
Yeah, and that's the way where it's a real spectacle. You walk out of this and you're like, I actually saw some stuff that I've not really seen before, and I didn't. Very often you feel numb by things 30 years ago your mind would have been blown away by, because you've just been bombarded by it. And that boat scene was one of the most Bondy things in it. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, not just the rich people thing, but also just having some kind of like crazy stunt work like that you don't see in everything. It was like Skyhook again, or some of the which Nolan also used in Dark Knight. But the boat thing was like a lot of the water stuff we do in some Bond movies. So yeah, and it didn't feel like he was just making a James Bond movie. I don't mean that. This has certainly a flair and a and a tone all its own. But that influence was even more felt than in anything else I've seen from him, and I didn't walk into this expecting a spy thriller. And his villain is a straight-up Bond villain.
Yes, when you get to the end and you really understand his motivations and everything, it is classic Bond, and that's what I thought was neat about this. So I know that I read this interview where Nolan was talking about his favorite Bond film is The Spy Who Loved Me, which is the Roger Moore one that is the first one that has Jaws in it. And
yeah, I've seen that.
That's his favorite, and he says that he's like making this movie. Usually, what he does is he previews movies. Or he'll screen movies for his crew, like he screened Dr. Zhivago before The Dark Knight Rises. But this was the one he didn't do that for.
And he said that it looks like he did.
It absolutely does. And he said that this is the longest he's ever gone without watching a Bond movie the last couple of years because he didn't want any influence to be so obvious in the movie. But I think in that sense it does feel like there's Moore and there's Connery and there's Dalton Bonds all kind of happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't feel too slanted towards like a Roger Moore flavor or something. But
well, after you said that, the first thing that comes to mind is that he must have had such withdrawal syndrome. This is more Bond than anything he's made because he had to make one. He wasn't watching them,
right.
So now he's got to make one. My best thing with this. I guess I'm gonna say is just like I kind of alluded to before, Washington's performance. He really won me over, and I feel like I really needed to love that guy because I didn't feel like any of the performances were stilted, but I felt like some of the dialogue was, and I felt like some of the characterizations were, where the actors weren't really allowed to bring as much like character and flavor, and in some places even bombast. I think it could have used because of perhaps the directing or perhaps just what was on the page. And I think I think characterization in this in some places is a little weak, where it's really interesting on the page, like what characters want and what characters are up to, and some of the and all the plot twists, as far as I understood them, seem to fit within this narrative and make sense. But they all were all really interesting on the page, but they were kind of stoic and stone-faced, a lot of them, and it seemed and I've had that with some of Nolan's other movies, and I felt like it was kind of counter to the flavor of the filmmaking itself. You know, you said that Nolan himself is kind of like the main character in a way, and I think that's true in this. And it's one of the things I really like about it, but it's also at the detriment of the characters themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that so it's strange because I did just rewatch Inception, and that is another movie where the performances elevate the characters because they're not really well drawn all that well, except for Cobb, who's Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I really like him in that movie, but. And in this one, everybody they serve a function in the plot. They don't really add anything with their characters. That's right. So you do have to have, like, Robert Pattinson is very charismatic and charming in this movie, and I really like him. But it's because I like Robert Pattinson, and I don't know who Neil really is, and I don't know if it really matters. And so, but when you're talking about John David Washington,
the boss guy, and it's less true of the tragic wife of Kenneth Branagh, though. I felt like there was some real pathos in that character. But
I think there's a scene where the protagonist is threatened. And John David Washington, the way he delivers his comebacks are so funny, and like it's very modern. It was not something I expected in a Nolan movie. There's an element of snark to it that you would expect in like something in like a Deadpool movie to go even plus for it. It's probably the most humorous I think we've ever had a Nolan protagonist ever be. And I think that just kind of comes from John David Washington's line readings. I think he does a really good job. It's
also, though, in the writing, and I think Nolan wrote this by himself, in the writing, it's a little bit like some of the kind of fun, like, one-liners and comebacks that Bruce Wayne would have in his Batman movies, except it happens more often. So, like, I think this brand of humor has been in these movies before, but with those movies, it was primarily just whenever Bruce and Alfred were on screen together, you'd get that kind of back and forth. And in this, it happens with a couple of different characters and a little bit more often. I could have used more of that, to be honest with you, but I needed that character to be as lovable as he was, or I don't think I would have enjoyed this movie as much as I did. And I will say, it took me about 45 minutes to get into it. I was just not sure what I was looking at for so long, and there were scenes retroactively where the traveling back through the past thing, stuff, I forget what they call it, the stuff reversing, was apparently happening.
Inversion.
The inversion thing was happening, and I didn't realize it was happening.
Oh,
And so
okay.
there are places where that, not supernatural, but that heightened component, that super science component is there and driving the narrative, and I don't realize it's driving the narrative. So when we get the scene early on that explains that with the bullet, I'm like, oh, that was what was happening in that scene? I didn't realize there was anything strange happening there. Because, again, it's so hard to visualize. I'm just not even getting that anything weird is going on. And I'm sure on second watch, I'll go, well, yes, of course it is. But just sitting there the first 5 minutes in the theater, I didn't get it. I felt like I was watching the bank scene of The Dark Knight again.
Yeah. So the movie starts off, and it's one of the most on-the-nose... Well, I mean... I took it as very on the nose, and it's like I mean I like how on the nose it is. It starts off with an orchestra tuning up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
right before they play, bang bang, and then the big action starts, and it's thinking, okay, this
That's
is
true.
communicating. This is him going very symphonic, and this is going to be a big musical score, almost like the movie is a symphony. I will say, for my best thing, what I liked about it is the filmmaking, and for a Nolan movie, that's kind of a common thing you'll hear people say, but I don't know how they made some of this stuff.
Me neither.
The editing alone, I couldn't believe what
I couldn't get my
final...
mind around a lot of what I was seeing. And I haven't had that in a long time. It was that Terminator 2 experience that a lot of people had, where it's like, how'd you, and I realized a lot of that was in a computer, but it's like, how'd you even do that? Your brain doesn't compute it because you've never seen it before.
There's an action sequence that happens, and then without spoiling anything, it sort of happens again later, where you sort of get answers to some things that you didn't even know were questions, and that kind of thing happens multiple times throughout the movie. And it's one of those things where all the pieces are coming together, and I'm still trying to figure out how the first and second piece got together, and now we're on like pieces 7 and 8. I'm thinking like, oh my god! But the final action sequence, I've seen it twice. I still don't even get everything that's happening. Like, it is so insane. This movie is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the
crazy.
thing about this movie. It's nuts. Cue a bunch of people who are going to say, well, it's actually not that nuts. I got it. Yeah, shut up. Whatever. But the thing is, like...
bully for you, I didn't. Like, that, yeah.
But when it comes to, like, it's not just, like, it's not just what is happening. It's the thought process of how this is all happening. From what I understand, there's very few, like, visual effects shots in this movie comparatively. I think Nolan said that there's only 550. There's a lot of shots in this movie. There's a lot more than 550, and he said that that is lower than like most contemporary rom-coms have. There's like fewer effects shots, and so it's like that means there's a lot of in-camera
And that's also because so much of the effects are like reversing footage and stuff, done in a way, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but done in a way where it feels like this epic scale, like a lesser filmmaker would have done it in CG, and like of course they wouldn't. Like anybody would have reversed the footage, but he does it in such a way where it feels grander than that. It's like it doesn't feel like you pressed rewind on a VCR. It feels like it's. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like, how did you even make it look like it was really happening?
Yeah, people are like sort of going inverted while the environments are not, and you're just like, oh my, like what's? And I think that the visual effects are completely seamless. There's no effect in here that I thought,
completely.
And so it's like it's one of the most immersive experiences I've had in a theater, and it was really cool to go back to a theater and watch this. I think that in terms of my worst thing, this is not my favorite Nolan movie, and it's not even in my top 5 Nolan movies. I don't think it's anything like his weakest film. I like it more than Dunkirk. I think Dunkirk is probably a better film, but there's a lot of stuff around the release of that movie that I still can't shake, and I whatever. But stuff outside of that movie has sort of ruined that movie for me. So it's not Dunkirk's fault, but I can't ever seem to have a good experience with that movie. I like it more than Insomnia. I like it more than Following, although Following is not whatever. But the thing is,
I've never seen that.
That's his first film. It's only 70 minutes long. It was made for $6,000, and nobody's a real actor in it. And it's basically a student film.
Everybody's got to start from someplace, Connor.
I like it. It's good. It's very inspiring. But just if you look at his other movies, it doesn't feel like a real movie compared to his other films.
Yeah, sure.
But when it comes to this, though, is that it's all spectacle and bombast, and it's very exciting and very cool. And I love the experience of being dragged around watching it. That being said, there's an emotional element that is missing in this movie that is present in stuff like, I know you're not a big fan of The Dark Knight Rises, but I think there is some emotionally moving spectacle in that movie.
I think he went too far the other way. Let me suggest that. I think he got notes. I mean, not notes, but I mean, like, I think he listened to criticisms about how his movies were starting to feel sappy, and like, I don't think Inception gets that rap as much, but I think, but certainly Interstellar does, and Interstellar has that problem in spades. That was one of the big issues with Rises, where I didn't feel emotionally moved with a lot of things in that, partly because of just character motivations that didn't play for me, but I felt like I was told I was supposed to be. And if you watch Begins to Dark Knight Rises, it is inching ever closer to telling you how to feel. And this movie is getting so far away from that it almost is asking you not to feel anything. Like almost. You know what I mean? Like, because it's not about that, and yet there are some, like, really dramatic things that happen that I should be feeling more than I am about. But I will say, I did have feelings about the relationship with Branagh and his wife, and how it was almost like that Matrix Merovingian thing where he used to be one person to her, and now he's something terrifying, and I don't know. I felt bad for her. And that scene where I don't want to get too far into spoilers, but that scene where he gets physically abusive was really hard to watch. And, like, I'm never jaw dropping. My jaw was literally dropped during that scene. I just couldn't even deal with it. And I was impressed that he allowed it to go that far. I actually really respected that scene. When he like nearly puts his foot on her face and then doesn't go, like, I loved that scene, and I hated that scene, if that makes any sense.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I think that, though, like, Elizabeth Debicki is, like, the emotional core of this movie.
Yeah.
But it's like she's very much a subplot in the movie.
That's
like,
right.
The focus and the spectacle does take center stage, and, like, the through line is, like, the pitch for the movie is, like, the concept of, like, inverted time and whatnot, and all that stuff is fascinating, and I enjoyed the experience of going along with it. But I think that in Inception, like, the first half of that movie is like nonstop exposition. I like it as a filmmaking metaphor. I like it, like, talking about the process, and what Inception is all about is creating an authentic emotional experience for somebody when they're actually being completely manipulated every step of the way. That's a film. Where if you have an emotional experience while watching something, it's not real. Those aren't real people up there. It's all smoke and mirrors. And, like, that's what I love about Inception, where the ending of Inception, you have Cillian Murphy crying his eyes out. It's like, I find it very emotionally overwhelming, and it cuts to Tom Hardy just clinically looking at him. Okay, it's done. Click. We're good. We're out of here. Like, it's like, so, like, that whole stuff is, I think, very interesting. When you look at his filmography, there is, like, this sort of emotional yearning where the core of, like, I know you're not a big fan of Rises or Interstellar, but, like, even regardless of how they were, like, I know that the center of those movies is an emotional core. Whether they become sappy or not, like, the center of those movies are emotional core. The center of this movie is spectacle. And
or at least they're supposed to be. I just think with Rises, it's kind of a forced emotional core, and Interstellar was working for me until, like, the last 15 minutes. I don't know.
I get that. And, like, but with this one, it's like, it seems to be the main character trying to figure out what's going on the same way we are up until the end. It's
really plot driven, and yet, like, I don't hate it for that. I just feel like it also doesn't want to only be that, right? Like, there's a component that it needs to be what it wants to be that it's missing, to your point.
Yeah, and I think though, like I said, this is like I had a very similar. I mean, I like this more than Infinity War, but I do feel like similarly about Infinity War, where I was like, once the spectacle wore off with me on Infinity War, I'm like, it's good, but I don't really understand like what's like it was all sort of like bringing everything together, and like you have everyone dying at the end and blah. Oh, sorry, spoilers for a movie everybody's seen, but like with that movie, it's like I needed Endgame, and I love Endgame a lot more than Infinity War, which I know is not a very popular opinion, but
Yeah.
I do because I get more emotionally fulfilled by it as opposed to just being like, oh, whoa, that person died. That's sad. That's emotional. But like I understand what's like the story of those characters in Endgame. With this movie, I think there might be a sequel happening in the back burner of this movie. I don't know. There could be, and like it could.
You're
once you
right.
pair
It
this
feels
with,
like in a way it's not done yet, or like this is. Well, you know what? You know why you're saying that? It's because this is an origin story at the end of the day.
absolutely, like when you get to the end of it,
You don't
like,
know that. You have no
Exactly,
idea that's what it is,
exactly.
because it's not like this guy just got out of bed this morning and became a secret agent. He becomes a different kind of secret agent. He wasn't a time traveling agent. He didn't know this kind of thing was possible. Do you know what I think part of the issue is too? And I don't think Inception has this problem. People take the what they would have thought before was impossible device in this movie way too in stride. It's like, oh, okay, so you can travel back in time and cars passing. Okay, like I get that this guy has been kind of like trained to handle stuff and take stuff in stride, but like I thought their reactions, like everybody's reaction to this technology, should have been closer to like Jurassic Park. Like, whoa, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, you do get a whoa, but it's a whoa. It's not even a whoa. It's a
Yeah, that's true.
whoa.
It's not even the Keanu Reeves ball. Yeah.
So, I'll say though, in terms of just this is maybe not even fair to the movie. It's not. This is maybe reviewing a movie I didn't get, but there's an interview with James Cameron and Christopher Nolan where they're talking about science fiction. I don't know if you've seen this video.
No, I've got to see that. Interesting.
So James Cameron describes like, yeah, Christopher Nolan, you make science fiction films. Like obviously Interstellar is the obvious one, but he called The Dark Knight a science fiction film from a sociological perspective.
Yeah, I agree with
and
that.
He called Inception science fiction, and the only reason it's science fiction is because the way they go into dreams is with a machine.
Yeah, right.
Take the machine out of it, then it's a more metaphysical.
It's not
film.
hard science fiction. There's not anything
No.
about how the technology works, but it is soft science fiction. It ain't fantasy. There's not a magical component. Yeah. And it is a what if question. It's what if you could go into dreams like that? It is a what if question.
And this movie is similar to Inception in that it has a piece of technology that allows the fantastical conceit to happen.
Yeah.
I think it might have been even better if you didn't have a piece of technology that did it.
I agree.
If it was more metaphysical,
I really agree
you had to
with
like
that.
achieve. I think that could have been even more mind blowing, and it could have been, I don't know, more philosophical, and you could have gotten more emotional resonance out of states of mind as opposed to technology.
Yeah,
so that's something.
And maybe I just need more viewings before I can appreciate this, and maybe there's more to it that I'm understanding. But there's some stuff in this that feels like put a pin in that, or it's part of the conceit and don't think about it too much. Like there is minor spoilers, but the technology for the time travel was built sometime in the future. And we know that there is, of sorts, a temporal Cold War happening. And the only other thing I have ever put those words together in talking about is Star Trek Enterprise, which opens with a temporal Cold War. And I couldn't believe, so that I was seeing this concept in a Chris Nolan movie. He put the main arc for Enterprise in his movie, but then actually wanted to make that, so he didn't have to get rid of it. At the end of the movie, like Enterprise does at the beginning of the fourth season, when Manny Koto comes aboard and says, "This is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore." And I don't understand the motivation for the faction, or not the factions, but whatever organization in the future wants to destroy us in the past. We have conversation about why they think they can get away with it. Where if things have happened already, the future will be fine because they happened already. So they're not worried about like cause and effect. They are realizing maybe doesn't work the way we thought it did necessarily. linearly. So if once you get to the future, you can make stuff happen in the past and it won't change the future because the cause. We talked about this with all kinds of time travel stuff, but the cause is a non-linear cause, so it's almost as if what happened in the future was actually in relation to the thing in the past. So it now goes here, and then that thing is able to happen. So they go, we can kill everybody in the past. It's fine. It's not going to mess us up. But why do they want to do that? And when I was reading a synopsis, it was, maybe this is a throwaway line that I missed, maybe it's part of the sound mix issue. Apparently it has something to do with, like, environmental stuff, where they're like, we messed up the environment, so we need to die, and so... Okay, like, I don't understand that. So is the idea, and again, I don't remember that in the movie. I just read it in a plot synopsis, so I'm not a lot to go on, and I don't know what the context was of that line, so I gotta watch it again, and I want to. And by the way, I am feeling it. This is a really interesting movie, and I liked it enough to look more at it. But if they're like, we need to fix the environment by destroying the past, that doesn't really gel with the whole notion of if we mess with the past, it doesn't affect the future, so we could... I don't know what their motivation is for killing anyone in the past. It seems like we just need a big conflict, and so that's what it... Like, we just need an end-of-the-world scenario for this movie. Did you glean any more with that than I did?
I
think that's important.
I think I did, but that would go into spoilers, and... we can maybe talk about it afterwards, but I don't know if what I gleaned from it would satisfy what your questions are. So we've been going on for a very long time about this movie.
Well, there's a lot here, and even though we're not spoiling, it's hard to talk about in a short amount of time. But we're already close to an hour, so we should probably get to our next movie.
Looked great. Last words, that looked great in IMAX.
It did look
very
great in IMAX.
loud. It's very loud. There's a scene with a plane, and when they show the plane, the music's like
too loud.
Oh my god!
Like, and I was right next to a speaker, which was a problem.
And I will say though, the music's great, and I'm not much of a person who listens to much contemporary music, but Travis Scott's song for this was a good song. I liked it. So
I don't remember it right off. So I guess it didn't really stick with me.
It only played during the credits. It played during the credits.
Yeah, which I didn't sit through. I guess I just listened to the first part of that. So yeah. But I think my biggest takeaway just from our conversation is that I desperately now need Christopher Nolan to make a silent film. I really need that to happen because I think he would make a brilliant one, and I think there's a part of him that wants to do that, and maybe he even doesn't realize it.
I think you would really like Dunkirk then. That's probably the closest thing he's come to a silent film. And a lot of people compared it to silent films when it came out.
But I want him to do a genre one. I want him to do something like this with a big sci-fi conceit or some kind of conceit that he's able to visualize and not rely at all on dialogue. Because the dialogue in this movie gets in the way to some degree, and
I agree
and it's necessary, and so those things are at loggerheads. Anyway, if there's anything you guys really want us to get into in spoilers, we can make a big deal that we'll talk spoilers for just a second. We're not going to do a full-blown spoiler cast, but in the meantime, I think we should probably just change gears and jump to our other movie, and then maybe at the end we can cover a couple things, if any. But we don't have a big audience right now, and there's not a whole lot of comments, so there's some, but I don't know that anybody's really going to want to have us talk about anything specific. And we should also mention that if you've not seen that movie and you don't want spoilers, don't look at the comments and maybe go ahead and stop watching the video once we get to the end of Bill and Ted. So I think it makes sense to put our how we felt about together and then do the spoiler stuff at the end, so people can just stop at that point.
I like that.
So if you saw Bill and Ted, or you want us to see us talk about that, stick around, because we're going to go into another how we felt about, and we're not going to spoil stuff yet about anything. But again, not full-blown spoiler cast, or we'd be here all night. Let's go ahead and real quick, I don't think this is going to take too long, get into Bill and Ted Face the Music. Connor, what is your experience with this franchise?
So when I first, so before I really got into movies, in middle school, I wanted to be a rock star. And I played guitar.
You told me that.
I think I may have. I had hair that went like down to here. I played guitar. My brother played bass. And I realized I knew nothing about movies, and I hear people reference like Ghostbusters and Tommy Boy and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know anything about anything. And so I tried getting into movies, and like two of the first things I got into was Wayne's World and Bill and Ted, which when I was in middle school were talked about largely in the same context. And I think they do sort of fit.
Interesting. Oh yeah, they do fit together. It's just Bill and Ted was kind of a lesser work in a way, and so I'm surprised that kids of your generation even knew what it was.
Yeah, I'm looking back. I think it's strange, but I knew about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and so I watched it sort of in that first heat of watching movies as a middle schooler, and I really liked the first Bill and Ted movie, and I'm pained to say I wasn't able to rewatch both of them before watching this. I really wanted to revisit them, and I probably will. Because I remember really liking the first one, thinking it was very funny, and I thought I remember enjoying the second one, but I don't really remember anything about it except for I thought Death was awesome. He was hilarious, and he's played by William Sadler.
And he doesn't do a lot of comedy, and he's so good at comedy.
Yeah, and so it's been well over 10 years since the last time I'd seen a Bill and Ted movie. And I actually got rid of my DVDs because I was going to buy the Blu-rays, but then I thought, well, if they're making a third one, I'll just buy the trilogy when they inevitably release a box set. Yeah. So I never really got around to rewatching it.
And I bet when they do that, we'll actually get some cool special features from the first two that we maybe didn't get before, because these guys, this was a passion project for these guys, and they obviously love this material, and I bet they want to keep talking about it. So I think you were smart to wait, because I bet you'll get some stuff.
Yeah. So I like this franchise. I really like Bill and Ted. They mean a lot. They meant a lot to me when I was younger, but Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World really were the ones that stuck with me more. I'm curious about you, though. I know Eric really likes the Bill and Ted movies, but what about you?
I missed them growing up, somehow entirely. I remember hearing the name of that movie and thinking it was some really obscure B movie. I thought it was more obscure than it actually was for the longest time. My buddy Tim Lyons was a huge fan of that. In fact, he kind of made Be Excellent to Each Other like his credo. And for those of you that don't know, Tim died a few years ago, 3 years ago, back in 2017. And Be Excellent to Each Other was kind of the theme of his funeral. And it was touching and heart-wrenching and everything. And so I weirdly have this connection to this franchise through Tim, more than it just initially speaking to me, because I got it through his lens. But I watched the first one about 8 or 9 years ago, back when it was still on Netflix, I think, and I enjoyed it. I watched it very casually because it's that kind of movie. It's a really casual movie. And I remember thinking it was really funny, and I remember thinking, man, I wish we made farces like this again. I miss this kind of thing. I miss just breaking all the rules and making a movie for almost no good reason. That's just there because it's fun, and because if there's a message at all, it's just simply positivity. And I think I also really appreciated the simple nature of it. It just wasn't trying too hard, and it didn't care if anybody was watching it. And I love movies like that. I love stuff that just goes, if you're into this, you're into this. And it had such a pure-hearted vibe to it, where like it was so wholesome. And there's little things here and there that like border on raunch, but like it's not a raunchy thing. And I think one of the reasons I avoided it, or maybe just didn't seek it out, was because I assumed it was a stoner comedy. And I think it's the anti-stoner comedy. It's these two guys that sort of act like stoners, that don't do drugs, they don't do anything like that, anything bad. They're just screw-ups. And despite the fact that they're screw-ups, everything is handed to them because their heart's in the right place. The universe literally gives them everything. I mean, it's almost like a parody of... I just thought of this. It's almost like a parody of just the hero's journey as a thing, where it's like, if you do the right thing, eventually like it's kind of happily ever after. Like eventually, the universe like coalesces to your will and gives you what you want. And in that, it wasn't even about anything they did. It was just how they were. It was like they were completely unchanging, and they were total idiots. But it didn't matter. And so like the future became all about them. And they were like the gods to everybody in the future because they just had this really simple philosophy of getting along, and it was just like worshiping Star Trek. It was like these guys were their Star Trek, and I loved that about it. I never saw the sequel until 2 days ago. I finally sat down and watched it for this. It's a trip, man. It's insane. I mean, it's really crazy and highly inventive. A lot of people say it's better than the first. I don't think I agree with that, but I appreciate how bombastic and ambitious it is. And I think the best thing about it avoids sequelitis like the plague. I think the best thing about it is that I guess we're just reviewing the first two movies now. We will get to the new one. But I've never talked about this, especially because I've never seen this particular movie. But Bogus Journey avoids sequelitis like the plague because it's not a time travel movie. There is an antagonist that comes from the future, but in the first movie, it's about these guys going on adventures. It's not about these guys time traveling. And so that first movie is their excellent adventure. They loved it. It was a lot of fun going through time and picking up all these historical figures and then having them do their homework for them. And then Bogus Journey was bogus. Like, it sucks. This journey is messed up, and why are we having to do? And like, we died and we went to hell, and that was the time travel conceit in that, the stand-in for the time travel. And so I loved it for going its own way so much, but it's really weird, like super trippy. And I get why people like it more, but I think I just sort of prefer the simplicity of that first movie a little bit.
Well, see, it's funny that you say that that's your experience with Bogus Journey, because my experience with it is that growing up, when I was first getting into movies and like looking up lists on YouTube or on the internet, Bogus Journey was almost like ritualistically on the list of the worst sequels that I saw.
I wonder if it's just been reappraised, because fans of this franchise, I'm constantly hearing Bogus Journey is the better one. Red Letter Media says that. I mean, it's really interesting.
So, and I've been sort of seeing its reappraisal, and I mean, I've developed a love for weirdness in the last like 7 years or so, and so I want to watch it, and I think I might love Alex Winter, as I've learned that like he co-directed a movie called Freaked, which is apparently just bizarre screwball kind of comedy, and I'd never heard of it, and I was looking it up, and I know that he really likes weird special effects and makeup and like sitting down and wearing all these crazy things, and I think I might love him. I just want to go and learn more about him, but
and he's not even an actor anymore. It's so interesting the performance he gives in this when we finally get to it, because he's not even acting anymore.
And he's got the best death scene in The Lost Boys.
I forgot he was in that. Yeah.
The one when Corey Feldman says, "Good night, bloodsucker," and then stabs. He stabs Alex Winter when he's like halfway transformed into a vampire.
I've only seen that once, and I think I didn't recognize him because I'd only seen Bill and Ted one time.
Mm-hmm. I always knew that he was in that movie. He's the first person I ever knew was in that movie, because on the back of the box it says Keanu Reeves from The Matrix and all these movies you've heard of, and Alex Winter, The Lost Boys. And I was like, he's like 16th build in The Lost Boys or something.
Obviously, even a movie that's breaking all the rules, very often the studio is going to sell it like they'd sell anything, so this wouldn't happen. But man, if the people that made the movie were selling that movie retroactively, you know what I bet they'd do? They'd have Keanu Reeves in The Matrix and Constantine and everything you've ever seen him in. And then Alex Winter from Bill and Ted. Like it'd be from the thing you're watching.
That'd be great. So I guess Face the Music is the almost 30 years later sequel of Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
And it is sort of, I will basically, I guess, show my hand. It's maybe the only good years later comedy sequel I've ever seen. And I think it largely succeeds by by sticking true to what these characters have always been, but understanding that the world they live in has changed. I like the premise of the movie. Basically, what this movie's about is Bill and Ted are now middle-aged. They're still kind of dumb guys they're idiots whose hearts aren't in the right place. They sort of speak with that SoCal 80s affect. And but here's the thing, though. 30 or so years ago, they were told that they were going to write a song that was going to unite the entire world and set up a utopian future. And they still haven't written it yet. And now, I mean, they're still married to the princesses. They have daughters now. But Wild Stallions, their band, is no longer the big, hot musical icons that they were. They've sort of fallen. And they're performing at weddings with weird experimental music as they keep trying to find the song that'll unite the world. But then they have to write it pretty soon, because otherwise all of reality is going to be completely undone. Time and space are going out of whack. So they come up with the idea, whoa, guys, what if we steal it from ourselves? So they go to the future to try to steal the song from the future, and then their daughters are actually going and kind of recreating Excellent Adventure by going back in time and kidnapping historical musical figures to help them write the song. And that's how we sort of get our new Bill and Ted movie. Do you want to go with this one and say what you thought about this, or should I?
No, I mean, you're already into it, and you've already shown your hand a little bit. So do you mind starting again, or?
All right.
Oh, man, there's no symmetry on this show.
I shouldn't have eaten something on this. Okay.
No, that's all right. I mean, we're gonna get complaints, and a lot of people aren't gonna ever watch again, but I have no problem with it. So, how I felt about now we just gotta wait for Connor to finish. Well, it was a good idea in theory. You know what you should have done? You should have made a sound effect, or I could have made the sound effect. And then like pull it off real fast so we can't see that you didn't actually eat anything. Why'd you take such a large bite, dude? Like that wasn't necessary. You didn't have to eat 1/3 of the pepper in one bite.
We got some pretty good work
here.
Oh
my god! Wow. That looks like you've been working on that for a while.
I know, it does. Oh, well, now seeds are falling out. Okay,
so anyways. That's amazing.
So,
well, Spencer, you're biased. Connor's your brother, and you probably always like his sense of humor.
What about Spencer?
Oh, Spencer's in the comments. He says, I love the bell peppers.
Oh, thank you, Spencer.
He's saying, we're fine for wasting time eating on camera and not reviewing this thing.
Hi, Spencer. Love you. So, I like Bill and Ted Face the Music. I think that it is very sweet, it is very sincere, and it's very funny. And I like how good-natured it is. I think that overall it's a little slight and inconsequential, and if it wasn't Bill and Ted, it might be a little on the forgettable side, but for what it is, which is a kind of lower budget send-off to the Bill and Ted franchise, it's pretty good. So much better than the Dumb and Dumber sequel. It's better than Zoolander 2. It's better than some other comedy sequel that I'm not thinking of.
And I've never bothered with those decades later comedy sequels because I always just assume they're not good. And so I'm comparing this more to like, you know, decades later action sequels and stuff like that.
That's true, yeah. So I liked it. I would say the best thing about this movie is I like the... Hold on, did I write down the best thing? Oh, yeah, and I think the reason this is the best thing about this movie is Bill and Ted. Those characters have stayed true to who they are, and I like where they are in life. I like how, you know, they're still very simple people, but they do have some complicated aspects, specifically with Ted. And he's kind of, they're sort of at a place in their life where they understand that things are maybe not going to be so excellent for too much longer if they don't keep going. But I do think the worst thing about this movie is its slight, inconsequential feel. And I don't want it to be more epic and bombastic or anything. I don't want it to be Tenet. However, I do think that...
I do. Just because that would be insane.
Bill and Ted in Tenet. That would be great. It would be called Tedent. So I think that in the end, I'd recommend it. It's solid, especially if you're a fan of Bill and Ted. Yeah. What about you?
That's earlier you mentioned Wayne's World, and it's too bad that we can't go back in time and make that crossover happen, That'd be a crossover, man. That'd be so cool.
Oh, dream come true for me.
Right?
Oh,
Well, and seeing the Wayne's World characters have to deal with like actual supernatural stuff because they were constantly imagining it, you know, and then like for them to actually face it, and, like, no, this is actually happening. They're like, no, it's not. No, it really is. You know, that'd be great. And also, like,
I would love that.
They're both sets of musicians, and it also would be really interesting putting those characters together. I'm stalling on purpose, by the way. It would also be really interesting putting those two sets of characters together because Wayne and Garth are not the same person. Wayne and Garth are like two halves of the same person. Like when you put them together, you get one person. And Bill and Ted are clones of each other. They're not it's not two aspects of a personality. It's a personality twice. That's those guys, and that's the joke. And it's great. So I did watch both movies right before I saw this, and I think I might have liked it better had I not done that. Oddly,
interesting.
I had a bad first impression with this movie, and I know a lot of people are really liking it, and I was a little bit surprised and perplexed by that. I did not really enjoy this. I didn't have a good time with it. There are things I liked. There are moments and specific jokes that I thought were good. You're right that it feels authentic to the other two movies in its dialogue in a lot of places. The comedy beats are really similar. The pacing of the exchanges are right. Like there's a lot that's right about this. Something feels very, very wrong to me. And I feel like I'm very much on an island off by myself, and I wonder if this is one of those things where if I watched it again, I would start to see what everybody else was seeing. I think this could be an expectation problem. So I'm admitting my bias. This is about feeling it, and this is about whether or not this was, for lack of a better way to say it, what I wanted it to be. I guess I want to take it on its own terms, certainly, but I'm also a little bit perplexed by some of its terms. I don't know. So, I think part of my problem is that when I got to the end of Bogus Journey, I felt like that was a movie that not only didn't require a sequel, but you couldn't make a sequel to. And I didn't know that because I hadn't seen it before. And so I was really excited about that they made another Bill and Ted because I was mostly really curious to see how Keanu Reeves would go back to that character, which is one of the huge problems with this movie. He can't. Wow. He doesn't know how to do that, and it's a problem. It's really unfortunate, especially because Alex Winter, it falls right back into it, and Keanu Reeves is now a completely 180, totally different guy. I'll talk about that again here in a second. But with the end of Bogus Journey, I latched onto something that apparently I wasn't supposed to. And so this is all on me. I brought my feeling it sign. I latched onto all of the silly magazine covers and stuff through the credits of that movie that are kind of like telling you the rest of the history of Bill and Ted, which I came to discover later. Apparently, the writers didn't intend, and that was something added in post, not by them, that they didn't want because they actually wanted to do another sequel and had no intention on this kind of happily ever after, like Bill and Ted are already at that point kind of dominating the world with their music. But I liked that stuff, and I wanted to see what the world looked like, what our modern alternate history would look like with them at the center of it. And I thought that's what you'd have to make with this. And instead, that ending is completely retconned in every way. And a lot of Bill and Ted fans are saying, well, it had to be because they didn't want that stuff but I didn't know that, and I liked that stuff. And there's this again, the positivity of all of that really rang true to me, and I liked a lot. So like there's the story being told through all those through all those headlines and things, and there's this whole little subplot just within that stuff in the credits about how the band everybody thinks is breaking up, but it's actually just a rumor, and Death goes off and tries to have his own career, but it doesn't work out, so he gets back with the band. And in this, we have to retcon all of that, so the band was successful for like 5 seconds, like a lot of hair bands are, which makes a lot of sense, certainly. But then Death runs off and ends up going back to hell. I don't know how he gets there, but he goes back to hell, and then they have to like go back to him and beg him to be back in the band. And I wanted to see the future of the end of that movie, and we had to retcon it, so we didn't get that. And again, I'm sure I'm the only person on the planet that really wanted that. But I didn't. I don't know. I wanted an alternate 2020. And what I got was Bill and Ted having to live in the cynical world that we live in, and that's not what I wanted. And you're right that and I didn't enjoy it because of that. I feel like you're right to a degree that it's still really positive, but I feel like the positivity at the end is kind of forced. I didn't like the message at the end of this. I didn't like, I mean, I don't want to get into spoilers, but like, I'm sure most of the people listening to this have already seen this movie, or they probably wouldn't care as much, but like, the Bill and Ted movies were all about Bill and Ted themselves changing the world. And that's not the end of this movie. And I didn't care for that. And that was a place where it felt really typical to me, where it was like you have a lot of these decades later sequels where you have a passing the torch thing, and now it's the kids that really matter, and they're gonna do all the world sweeping stuff, and that was where it felt really typical to me. And so there were. And also, I felt like, and Red Letter Media said this too, and I felt this while I was watching it. I didn't want it to just be the greatest hits of the first two movies, which is another thing that a lot of these things tend to do. And so we gotta have the girls, and they're fun, and I like them fine. But I don't love that we had to retcon them into girls, but I sort of get why they felt the need to do that, because they probably didn't want to just like repeat themselves and have to cast like a couple of guys that were Bill and Ted. But then there's interesting things you could have done with that too, right? Because you could have had you could have had like a Bill and Ted Jr. that went a completely different direction than their fathers, and that won't like them at all, and that could have been really interesting. But instead, we get these carbon copy duplicates as girls, and the actresses are fun. I couldn't watch a whole movie or I couldn't get excited about a whole movie with them, I don't think. And it felt like they wanted to go that way. And in fact, I've read that the writers are kind of hoping that maybe they can make those movies. And I don't care. I don't care about that. But they're like, we're kind of done with Bill and Ted if we have to, and like that just seems like the really typical thing to do, right? It's like, Bill and Ted we had a romp, we had our last hurrah, we finished it, and now we're gonna pass it off to their kids, and it's got to be about the girls now, and I don't know, I just personally don't care about that.
I picked up on, like, I read that differently, and I mean, I didn't know that that's what the writers were wanting to do. You're talking about like the torch passing. I thought the torch passing was a lot more reverent to Bill and Ted, and it didn't just leave them in the dust.
No, it doesn't. I mean, and that's absolutely fair.
I think that to me, it just sort of felt like them being around was okay. So, I with this franchise, I get where you're coming from, and like you're making a lot of sense, and you make a good case, and I have to sort of bring in a little. Well, in my own personal experiences and doing all that stuff. So a lot of the stuff is sort of like, what I liked a lot about Bill and Ted is that like my brother and I are twins, and we're not like carbon copies of each other, but it was kind of neat to see like a duo that had so much in common. Like my brother and I had so much in common, and their daughters reminded me so much of like me and my brother's younger brother, where when we were into music, my brother and I were like always wanting to be like playing and like just like playing your instrument. And our little brother, he's actually gotten into music recently, and he's much more interested in like the producing element of it and like the behind the scenes element and like putting that all together. And the daughters kind of struck that chord in my eyes. And so they didn't really feel like carbon copy clones. I mean, they look a lot like who they're supposed to be the daughters of.
Well, they just are in the sense that they're doing impressions of those guys, and they're doing. That's all I meant. And they're doing those really well, certainly.
And I think that their characters, like their interests, are mildly different, and they do feel like they idolize their dads. And I don't know, like I liked where they kind of, I don't know, I didn't feel like they were trying to get you excited for a Bill and or a Logan and whatever like spin-off. I wasn't Billy and Thea. I wasn't getting a vibe that they were gonna like get excited for them to be. I
didn't get that vibe until the very end when we got to the message of the movie. That was my whole thing. It's it's them that save the world now. Okay, I don't love that.
And I didn't get that feeling even during the ending. It was a little bit more nuanced than I maybe expected it to be. I will say though that like while I was watching this movie, I was enjoying it more than when I was not watching this movie. After it ended, it's very light and it's very fluffy, but it is sort of like calories that burn off pretty quickly. I don't find this particularly memorable, and there are things about it
I
that
don't either.
I looking back on it, I can't help but look at like the sort of wasted potential that's here.
And some of that is because of repeated stuff. Right, where again, it's got to be a time travel thing and go to hell again. And what I was going to say earlier is I want to echo Red Letter Media when they said it would have been really nice if, and they liked it by the way, but it would have been really nice if we could have had yet a third thing. And it doesn't feel like a proper trilogy in that way. In some ways it couldn't because it's made so much later. And that's one of the things that's weird about it too. Like this is somewhat unfair, but like I just sort of feel like it's another artifact that we don't really need, that doesn't really need to exist. And like every time I say that, somebody goes, "Well, no movie needs to exist." Yeah, I get that, but what I mean is, it doesn't feel like it's putting a cap on anything that needed a cap. Like when I got to the end of that second movie, I went, "Oh, they made 2 movies, and that's it. Like that's all it should. That's all it should be." So I guess when I say I wanted that third movie, somebody said like this conflict is more interesting than it would have been if we'd done the alternate history thing I'm talking about. I actually kind of agree with you. I guess what I'm saying is, if we had to make another one, I didn't want that ending retcon because I liked it. So if we had to come back to this, that's what I kind of needed it to be. I don't even know what that story is. I'm not saying there is a story there. So I guess what I'm really saying is I kind of wish they hadn't made this. And what's weird is, and also because that first movie in '88 is like really ultra '80s, and then you get the next one in '91, and it's really ultra '90s, and then there's 2 whole decades we skip. And now it's very much the sensibilities of today, and that was a leap I couldn't make with it. I was like, I don't want to see these characters in this day and age the way this day and age is. And another thing that I really didn't enjoy is I get why they did it, I just didn't like it. One of the things, it's about feeling, I just didn't like it.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's weird that you're saying all these things and you're making a lot of sense. It's like
it's just not the experience you had with it. Yeah.
My only defense is, I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, sure. And my only defense, what I'm saying is, I didn't. I mean, that's all I've got. But like, I didn't want to see the cynical versions of Bill and Ted. I don't care that they aren't that way at the end. I don't care that it's just these future selves that they end up paving over. In my mind, those characters don't end up there. And I couldn't go with it. I couldn't get there. I didn't want to see these guys like getting drunk all the time, and like that's not these characters. And like I get how they got there, and I get that it was about like never being able to finally write that song, and it was about losing the princesses, and like I get all of that, but these guys went to hell and it didn't change them. Like I had a really tough time with it. There were places where it felt contrary to the premise, made by the same guys as a passion project. So like, who am I to say? This in a lot of ways is probably what they wanted to make back in the day when they thought they might make a third one. But it's I think I just have an interpretation in my head that it violated, and it just didn't feel like it just felt counter to the premise. I don't know. I really didn't care for it.
Those are all very well articulated points, and I get why you felt the way you did. which I guess is what a good review should do. But
real quick,
I
this is
think that,
in spoiler territory, but I gotta read this. So let me just say this is a spoiler about the end of the movie. We're gonna go ahead and mention it. So if you don't want to know anything about this, turn the video off now. And we won't go full spoilers necessarily after that. We're not gonna talk about a lot of things that happen in this spoiler wise, but I do feel the need to comment on this. Stephen Murphy says, I don't think that was the intention. It's more about everyone coming together and playing the song. Who wrote it didn't matter. It's more about everyone playing it, which they do. Everyone plays a part. Yeah, get that. I just don't like that choice, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, I get what they were making. It feels counter to the premise to me. You had two movies that were all about how these guys created this crazy positive future just in them being them. And it's not about that anymore. And I don't know why it can't be about that anymore. I mean, it sort of is, but...
Well, I mean, I guess in what you say, it sort of is where I got it, is that them just being them is to be inclusive to everybody else. And that sort of is like, they do like make it, what's the word I'm looking for? They do externalize the message in a very literal way, in a way that I thought was kind of sweet and was it corny and sort of sappy? Sure, it's Bill and Ted, whatever. But like, in a way that like, you look at something like The New Mutants, though, and I was rolling my eyes when they had to literalize things.
Yeah,
this one, it kind of played to the strength, and it's like the best time I've ever seen something this sort of kind of corny and literal being played out. I thought it actually did it pretty well. I do want to say, though, that there are things that are just elements about this thing that made me laugh, because I did actually consistently laugh throughout this movie, which is not something I
didn't have that. I chuckles. Like, I'm not saying that none of the jokes played, but it's hardly anything where the Robot in Hell was really funny. Now, I didn't like the robot character at all, but the business about, like, is that a robot in how does a robot get in it? That's hilarious.
And I like how they just sort of roll. They're like, yeah, now you're a robot who has somehow died and gone to hell. Anyways, let's go. But,
yeah, that's great.
Like right off the get-go, the Missy character is now marrying Ted's younger brother.
Yeah, that's really
funny.
That's
funny to me.
No, that's really funny.
And then that whole bit was super funny. Like their speech that they give, their toast is funny, and I liked the song they played. I thought that was funny. I thought that hold on, I have a few here. I think that another joke I really liked is, I mean, you talked about you didn't like seeing the cynical versions of Bill and Ted. I thought the interplay between the different Bills and Teds was really fun, and hearing Keanu Reeves in a bad British accent say "poppycock" was hilarious.
No, that seems great. Yeah, I'm rejecting it on principle. I think, you know.
Again, I get what you're saying. I liked I don't know, like, and you said like the Robot in Hell is great, and William Sadler is so good, and like I actually didn't mind the robot. I thought his joke it became too one note, and it became very stale into the third act. And then you realize they're just doing death again, and then death actually shows up. Yeah. And you're like, okay,
he was just death again.
We got no need for you anymore, robot. But I mean, death is wonderful. I love William Sadler's death, and having that whole bit about like him going solo. I had forgotten that was actually in the clippings at the end of Bogus Journey.
I don't think a lot of people remember the clippings because they're not supposed to count, apparently. And in my mind, they're canonical. Because I liked them.
No, that makes sense. I don't know, just like I was constantly amused throughout, and I think that there's a low budget element here that sort of makes. When I saw the preview of this and they are going into futures, I thought they were like going into many different alternate futures where they're like they're in like prison and like, funny muscle suits. And it is just sort of the same sad sack Bill and Ted future. And that did make it feel a little too small scale.
Well, and that's another thing that Red Letter Media suggested was that third thing could have been going to alternate realities. And it should have been, maybe, because that's what the princesses are doing off screen. Is we're told that they get in the booth, and apparently the booth can not only go to alternate or to different time periods, but it can go to different dimensions, because they went to see if there was a dimension where they were actually happy with Bill and Ted. and we don't see it. It's off screen, and they suggested maybe it was a thing that they intended to film, and for whatever reason they couldn't get into the movie, so it just happens off screen. But knowing that makes me think, wouldn't it have been cool if the whole movie was Bill and Ted, instead of going to future versions of themselves trying to figure out trying to steal the song, they went to alternate realities, and then they realized that in alternate realities they're not actually always nice guys, and that would have been the way to get away with cynical Bill and Ted in a way I didn't think it worked here. And so I think there's stuff they did here that I could have really liked, but not in this timeline.
Makes sense. And I mean, look, I've heard a few people say that they think Keanu Reeves is not here anymore.
It doesn't work in terms of he's and
me,
if you watched them, fine. But if you'd watched them right before it, I don't think you'd have that.
Maybe not.
It's going right into it again. He doesn't know how to smile anymore. He's like incapable of it, and when he tries to, it's awkward. And like he's just a completely different guy now. Like there are places where he, not as future Ted, but as current Ted in the movie, is giving like a lot of the same really intense expressions he does when he plays John Wick. And I'm watching this. I mean, you can't argue with that. Go back and look at it. There's just all these scenes where you're just going, yeah, dude. And he's that guy. He's like, yeah, dude. And now I'm gonna go fight a bunch of guys and shoot people in the head, dude. Like,
I love your angry Keanu Reeves impression.
It looked like, solid. And he's always angry now. And I know this is an actor who isn't that way, but it's like he learned how to do that at some point to be a dramatic actor, and now it's plastered. Like his mom said it'd get stuck that way, and it did.
Nice.
And so I feel like I'm watching. I feel like I'm watching John Wick trying to do a Ted this whole movie, and it's so weird in contrast to Alex Winter, who falls right back into it with no problem at all. It's really easy. And so, like, I almost needed Keanu Reeves to be recast. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want that, but he's not playing that character anymore. He can't do it. And he's trying, like, it looks like he's having a good time. I'm not saying he doesn't want to be there. And like Red Letter Media suggested, he had no reason to be there if he didn't want to. He doesn't need the money. It was a low budget thing that almost didn't get made. Nobody wanted to make it.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And that took me out the whole time.
Okay. I mean, maybe I guess I did the right thing and just I remember Bill and Ted. I'm gonna watch another one.
Yeah. No. I think that was the right call, and I'm glad that we each did it differently. That one of us actually watched them right before, and because I don't think I would have been disappointed with it as much as I was had I not, especially if I just never saw the second one. Although I will say, because this is drawing from so much, and it does retcon things, but because this is building on and drawing so much from that second movie, I don't think it's a thing you can watch in a vacuum. I really don't. I think you'd be completely lost.
Yeah. I think that there are like budgetary limitations here, that it looks better than a lot of other comedies. It does look kind of like a movie, but it doesn't look enough like a normal movie either. I'm glad I was able to watch it, on a computer screen as opposed to in a theater.
To see that movie, yeah.
And I think especially after watching Tenet, which maybe is not fair to compare the two, but you watch something like Tenet where the craft of it is just so impressive, and you watch something like this and it's cute and it's amusing.
Well, I watched this first, which is the correct order.
I just wanted to see if there was one last thing. I actually did like. There's a scene where, again, maybe it doesn't make any sense. They visit themselves when they're super old, and they're not like cynical in that far into the future.
Yeah.
Somehow, even though it's conceivably the same Bill and Ted from the future, but regardless, I thought that's.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of didn't make any sense in terms of like the inner logic of what they were doing.
Yeah, because if everything worked out already by the time they got there, then reality wouldn't be falling apart, which is the whole reason they have to fix the problem. But there's a lot of crazy, wacky plot holes like that, and you can say that about the other two movies too. But this felt a little bit more careless. Like some of that felt intentional with the other two movies, and some of this really felt careless to me.
Well, I did, but regardless, I liked that scene a lot. I thought it was really heartwarming, even though logically why they would even be there talking to that version of themselves didn't make any sense. It was still heartwarming, and I liked it. I did, and I don't know what it was.
Yeah, sure.
It somehow worked for me. And then there was also, like, I mean, the Billy and Thea going back in time. It is just sort of playing the greatest hits of Excellent Adventure and then Bogus Journey, but still,
all those actors
Jimi
are
Hendrix,
fun. Yeah,
Jimi Hendrix, doing a guitar solo or a guitar battle with Mozart on piano. I really liked that scene. I just thought it was cool.
Well, and the standout for me was the kid playing Louis Armstrong. I thought he was awesome.
Really good.
Just the way he got his mouth like that. That was and he sounded right. And what's funny is it was always low rent versions of historical characters. Like, they were never trying to look accurate. That was the point. And that was what was funny about it. And this did exactly the same thing. And yet there's sparks of authenticity. Where it's like, that guy's doing a really good Louis Armstrong impression, but like the sort of impression you might expect from a really good stand-up comic, not somebody making a biopic.
Ooh,
and that's why it worked.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I guess I just ultimately found it amusing, and I don't really have a whole lot of like hardline defenses of this, but
yeah, and I didn't expect us to talk about
it
this long, but we had opposite sign flips, so it became a debate. No, not even a debate, but just a discussion about our differences.
I guess that's the first time we've ever had a split decision.
Is it really? And I expect that to happen with me and you frequently, because you and I have different sensibilities, and there are movies you love that I don't. So I mean, not just don't like, but like really don't like, and
yes.
So
it's like Dark Knight Rises. Hey!
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that we had it that way.
Right on. I got nothing more to say about Bill and Ted.
Yeah, I will give it another chance, and now that I've adjusted to what they made, I guess, and I may sit with it and try it again, because like I'm such an outlier on this. I feel like I'm missing something. Like I'm really surprised, but and now a lot of people are saying it's just fine, and they're somewhat indifferent to it and not really impressed with it, but like it bugged me, and other people aren't really having that reaction, so.
Yeah, I'd give it like a 7. I did enjoy it, and it's not like a hard 7 either. Very quickly though, do you know if Eric has seen it yet? Because I know that he does like the Bill and Ted movies.
No, I haven't talked to him about it.
Okay.
I don't know if he's doing the like $20 VOD thing, or if he's going to wait for it to come on video, or how exactly he's handling that. So I haven't talked to him about it.
$20 VOD.
And I need him to make and I need to tell him to make sure and go see Tenet, because that's very much his kind of movie.
I would be fascinated to know his take on that as well.
Yeah, me too.
So is the next
you know how
we're
obsessed
a
spy fan that guy is. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
I
know how much he likes Fleming.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is the next one we're going to talk about is Mulan, right?
Yes.
That's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll do that as its own thing, because I don't think there's anything else coming out this week that we really need to look at, is there?
Nah, we'll be fine.
Okay, cool. Well, look forward to that next week. Probably Sunday again. We'll let you know ahead of time, but I imagine that's when we'll do that. And you are one of those people that I don't know how to talk to for less than an hour and a half. We gotta someday figure that out, I guess. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you had a good time with us. I'm not seeing any comments about spoilers, so especially because we have. We have talked as long as we have. We'll go ahead and call it a day and just make this basically a straight up how we felt about. So anyway, when we're finished, you can eat your red pepper, and it doesn't have to be because you disliked something.
Right. That is correct.
Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I'm Captain Logan. That was Connor Nielsen, and we'll see you again next time.